Welcome to Boulder City City Council. Appreciate everybody being here. I will say that items listed on the agenda may be taken out of order, and two or more agenda items for consideration may be combined, and any item on the agenda may be removed, or related discussion may be delayed at any time. I'll now call the meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, posting a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The meeting was posted in accordance with Nevada Open Meeting Law, and all members are present.
Thank you. As far as starting, we will now have Pastor Kevin Doyle offer the invocation, after which we'll remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, thank you, Council, for the opportunity to pray. And I know that I speak for so many that are so grateful that our city and its council continue to look to the Lord during official business, as God is the giver of all knowledge and wisdom. Let's look to the Lord in prayer together. Dear God, the Savior of the world and the author of perfecter and the perfecter of our faith, we look to you today because you are the giver of life and love and knowledge and wisdom. Today we acknowledge that you lead and guide this council, and these elected leaders are people with ideas and thoughts that come from heaven. I pray that these ideas will be implemented for the betterment of the whole. Today I pray for our leaders, as Proverbs 29:11 says, when the godly are in authority, the people rejoice. From our nation's capital to the walls of this little city, we pray that our leaders step up and are able to ask the Lord for wisdom, for ways to bring peace and prosperity to our areas of influence. We pray for the citizens of this city. As Proverbs 11:4 says, that upright citizens are good for the city and make it prosper. I pray for the safety of our city, our schools, our teachers, our doctors, nurses, really the entire community. I pray for the prosperity of this city, known throughout that would be known throughout this region because of its upright citizens and leaders. Today, Lord, we thank you that you give hearts of compassion and empathy as a way to help understand the needs of the people that you're calling these to oversee. May the discussion today be fruitful and kind and courteous, and while when needed, being firm, making the boundaries that will help make Boulder City the best place to thrive. We again today, Lord, continue to pray for the protection of our city so that people here can continue to feel free and blessed by the Lord. We pray all of these things in the most incredible and matchless name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you.
Thank you. Join us with the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the way of public announcements, a statement to read on the 12 kV line. To help encourage reinvestment of vacant properties on Nevada Way between Elm Street and 5th Street, the city is currently updating the electrical system along Nevada Way. The project is expected to be completed by June. In response to concerns regarding traffic disruptions, city staff has revised project scheduling to minimize traffic disruptions during the project construction. The city wants to ensure that community reinvestment does not disrupt our residents and visitors' access to our local business community. And we would like to open at this time for public comment. Anybody who has anything that would like to say, up to 3 minutes, is welcome to call in or come to the podium and have the matters related to the things that are on the agenda. So welcome anybody who would like to come forward here in the chambers to come forward. And or our call 702-589-9629. Is there anyone on the phone, Madam City Clerk? Okay. And anyone who would like to come forward is welcome to do so. Seven oh 9629 to call in. No one on the phone, no one here in chambers. We will close public comment and move to the approval of the regular agenda. And I would note that the applicant on item number 5 has requested to remove that from the agenda. So we will not be hearing item number 5 in deference to the applicant who has made that request. So I would hear for a motion to approve the regular agenda absence, the item number 5.
I'll move to approve the regular agenda as amended.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Thank you. And then we will move to approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to. I'll second it then. Okay, thank you.
Been
approve the
seconded to
consent.
approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Thank you. It's unanimous. So moving to the regular agenda then, we will have number 4, our presentation from Dr. Deanna Jasklowski.
Good evening, Deanna Jaskolski. I proudly serve as the Region Superintendent that supports our wonderful schools in Boulder City. As a note of business, there are no notices of noncompliance to report. So I have the celebrations from our schools to share and then highlights from the report that was submitted. For Boulder City High School, their basketball team was recognized by the NIAA as the 3A Girls State Academic Team Champions. So the NIA, which is a nonprofit governing body of high school sports in our Silver State, is proud to present a special award each year to the team with the highest grade point average in each sports classification. The NIAA considers the State Academic Championship Award to certainly be equal to the Athletic Championship Award. And as the NIA coaches, administrators always stress that participants are students first, then athletes. I'm honored to share that the girls basketball team had a 3.82 GPA overall. The boys bowling team was recognized by the NAA as the 3A Boys State Academic Team Champions. And the boys bowling team had a 3.54 GPA. Additionally, the boys bowling team were the 3A Bowling State runner-ups. The girls' flag football team played in the state championship game at Allegiant Stadium. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the Eagles to compete on the grand stage, elevating the sport and recognizing the hard work of the athletes. At the end of the game, unfortunately, lost to Virgin Valley 19-6, but the girls played their hearts out. They were named the 3A Girls Flag Football State Runner-Ups. Also, this past week at Boulder City High School, the robotics team was part of the alliance that placed second overall in the first robotics competition held in Orange County during week 1. Their next competition will be in Flagstaff, and good luck for the Arizona North Regionals. Their cheerleaders were all smiles. Last week at the competition at Knott's Berry Farm, they placed first in stunt cheer, second in show cheer, and won the Spirit Stick for Best Spotters, and received an award for their amazing choreography. Their Winter Guard performed their show Phoenix Rising at Sunrise Mountain High School and was awarded first place in the high school AA division. They perform again at Sierra Vista and Foothill High School. Moving on to Garrett Junior High School, they were honored for their outstanding STEM education at the state capitol in Carson City. On March 6, teachers Mark Olson and Ryan Pusko and Principal Melanie Timot traveled to Carson City to represent the school as they were honored by the governor and the state superintendent of education as one of the 6 new CCSD schools for their efforts in bringing innovation and creativity to their students through STEM education. Their students and staff have worked tirelessly to enhance those STEM and STEAM programs. In addition to their core classes, we've talked about here prior, their students engage in robotics, hydroponics, design and modeling, flight and space, environmental engineering, STEM guitars, fine arts, music, and publications. They celebrated their students who earned straight A's and took them to Boulder Bowl. They had a wonderful time. Their students are beginning to build their STEM guitar kits, which were generously sponsored by the Rotary Club of Boulder City. Their guitar and band teacher, Stacy Toll, and Rotarian Larry Archuleta work together to teach and facilitate the learning of building guitars. Garrett Junior High School has even more to celebrate as their cheerleaders competed in the first ever cheering competition in Knott's Berry Farm, earning second place overall. They're also awarded for showmanship and spirit. A special thank you to coaches Brandy Mazur and Lisa Vesley for their commitment to helping these students succeed both on and off the mat. They want to move on to festival season as Garrett's Advanced Band traveled to UNLV for the Advanced Band Festival under the direction of Miss Stacy Toll. The students had outstanding performance in 4 challenging pieces. After their stage performance, their band participated in sight reading clinics. Garrett's Advanced Band earned straight 1s and a superior rating, which is the top rating. Student Council was invited by Park and Rec Department to work through their employees in one of their training sessions and run team building activities for a sense of community. In Mitchell Elementary School have been busy celebrating Nevada Reading Week. Throughout the day, their librarian organized activities to foster and continue their love of reading. Their Read by 3 strategist had organized Family Literacy Night, focused on written communication has changed over the centuries. They had 300 people attend last year, and they're expecting just as many this year. It was sponsored by many in the community, Sunset Rotary, Albertsons, Friends of Boulder City Library, and the amazing teachers who work for this event. Miss Simone's class joined a contest sponsored by the Silver Knights to earn a reading presentation by the Silver Knights at the school, and their amazing parent group worked to make it extra special by decorating the stage with Silver Knights themes balloons. They are preparing students to be ready to read by 3, which is the academic focus for their school performance plan. They noticed their students were struggling with nonfiction text. To give students more opportunities to practice, their classroom teachers and specialists put together a plan to have reading they do in library, art, and science to support learning and effectively read nonfiction texts. Just another example of the high level of professionalism of their staff. And lastly, they want to share that their students' lighthouse leaders are finding more ways to support their schools by helping keeping the school grounds, managing lost coats, and speaking about habits at morning ceremonies. Lastly, from King Elementary School, they'd like to share that they held their annual Glow Dance, which is their spring family event at the Boulder City Recreation Center. Over 380 tickets were sold. They had a great night for their entire community. That event raised over $400, which they used to start a school pantry to support students and families struggling with food insecurity. Hope Church of Boulder City has partnered with them to help stock and organize pantries, non-perishable food items that can be taken home. King families participated in the King Heart Challenge, raising over $5,000 to support the American Heart Association, And the kids were rewarded to be able to slime Miss Fisher and Miss Quarterman and the principal. King is gearing up for state testing. Their most recent MAP interim test shows a predicted proficiency of 61% in math and 63% in reading, which would be a 7% increase in math and a 5% increase from last year's scores. In supporting reaching the goal, support from Boulder City High School and Garrett held a pep rally for their students to focus on self-confidence, effort, and alleviating test anxiety. And lastly, one of the key points that they'd like to stress with the community is that this year our state test contains nearly half the numbers of questions that the prior state test contained, and they believe that this shortened test will alleviate stress and anxiety for our students and create a better academic picture overall for their performance. So that was our celebrations from our 4 remarkable schools and leaders. Moving on to the report that was submitted. The data shared in that report was from the end of last year's state assessment. And so I want to share a few highlights and also share that our school leaders have done a remarkable job in disaggregating that data at the beginning of the school year and making instructional decisions and adjustments based on some of the components in the data to ensure that our students are continuing to grow in proficiency, as you've heard from some of the highlights. So wanted to highlight that Boulder City shows strong proficiency rates in English language arts with minimal achievement gaps across our student groups. 100% of Boulder City high school schools are rated 3 stars or above. There's steady growth in participation and strong performance with advanced coursework, diversity, and achievement. Would also like to share in terms of chronic absenteeism, the chronic absenteeism rate at that particular time is approximately 15%, which is amongst the lowest in the Clark County School District. And we champion that for our leaders and educators and the support of the community and our families. And lastly, want to share that suspension rates and behavioral incidents are lower, contributing to a more positive school environment. And again, contributing to the partnership and thankfulness of our teachers, educators, and leaders with our families and our schools. And with that, any questions that you may have for me?
Any questions?
My question, I'm sorry. My question is on page 65, the quarterly municipality report, and this is on Boulder City. And of course, we don't have the 24-25 yet. I'm going off the 23-24. And it looks like a lot of our children went down instead of up. And living in Boulder City, I think we should all be about an 80. That's how I look at it. But I was really kind of surprised to see that. And I'm just wondering, why do we think that we're right around 50% instead of up in the 80s? And also, I just kind of shocked about the science in grade 10 is at 6.7% proficiency. I just think, how are we going to build any astronauts that way? So that was my question of why we're down, and we're actually down from the prior year on almost all of them.
Thank you for the question. I'll speak to the science first. And if we take a look at the 2 years prior, I'm still not happy, to your point, with where the achievement and the proficiency levels lie. What we have done as a school district is taken a look at the Tier 1 materials, so those basic support materials that we have for our students in science, and so that we have selected what's called Open SciEd. And our science curriculum has moved from more discrete memorization skills to really understanding phenomenon of science. So we're providing intense professional learning and support around these materials to address these gaps. So not only the decline that we've seen from the prior year, but again, knowing that and taking a look at last year at 24% of our 10th graders, which the test is taken majority by 9th graders. However, that we're not satisfied with that incredibly low percentage of our students that are proficient. And so, go ahead, please.
No, so you're going to bring in new books and or things like that, more learning tools in science?
Yeah, so we have done that for this school year.
Oh, for this school year.
Yes, so that
Okay.
has started at the end of last school year in terms of selecting our new materials to best support the standards that the assessment that the state expects for our students to be proficient in, and have provided professional learning and support for our educators for that, and are continuing that work.
And then I had my one last question was, I didn't know what it was, because it seems like they go higher here where it says advanced coursework and diversity and achievement, and kind of reading it, it sounds like it's for advanced classes in maybe like shop or something like that. Oh, I'm sorry, it's page 115.
Oh, you're fine. I think my page numbers are different. So the advanced coursework and diversity, the enrollment in the high skill, nope, that one's high.
Because it looks like they're doing better there.
Oh, yes. So if we're taking a look at the, are you referencing the enrollment in the advanced placement classrooms? That
Yes.
chart? Okay. So what we're doing in working with all of our high schools, and it's specific here in Boulder City, is the number of AP courses that our students are taking, as well as career technical ed courses, as well as advanced placement, or excuse me, as well as dual credit. And so some of our students have taken on the path of dual enrollment for college credit in high school, which may account for some of the decline in the AP, because they've made those choices but are still participating in rigorous coursework.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
I also kind of had questions in the science area. So prior year, say a year ago, right, when it was at 24%, I mean, it's across the board if you look at the district as a whole.
Yes.
So, I mean, fifth grade went from 16.5 to 12.2. Sixth to eighth grade went from 64.7 to 56. 10th grade went from 8.7 to 9.4. And that's just the district as a whole, and that doesn't include us. The only one, 6 through 8 went up in science for us, and congratulations on that. But my question is, if we're giving them more materials, what's the difference between the materials they had the year before when they got 24.1% and last year when they got 6.7? Is it a materials problem?
Thank you. Good question. I want to address also the elementary and the middle with resources and materials. So we have seen a slight increase across the district, in particular in middle school. This is the third year that they've had access to resources and materials that are called Amplify. There's an incredible amount of real-world application with simulations that our students are having an opportunity to participate in. And so we've seen a slight increase with those students that have had access to those materials for 3 years. Again, nowhere where we'd like to see that. We'd like to see that growth at a much more rapid rate. To address the specifics in the grade 10 science proficiency, they did not have consistent materials across our system. Now, in addressing those specifics, I can work with Mrs. Wagner and provide more detailed information there outside of the materials component that has been addressed.
Because that's a huge drop for Boulder City, and it kind of leaves me wondering if our kids will be prepared to enter college in a field such as this, in a science field. And I'm not quite sure, but are we still the 5th largest school district in the nation, or what? We are. So that's a large number of our nation's kids that we're sending into our college or our trade or wherever we're sending them, right? And I recognize that this is hard work to keep such a large, diverse group of individuals. But I just think when you see numbers at this level, that's critical. I mean, 6%, you can't go much lower for next year. So, and we're in Boulder City, and I tend to know that they do a great job. We have great teachers. We have great things that are going. So I don't know what the disconnect is, but I surely would love to see a connect and and I don't know if more materials is the answer. We'll see, won't we? We'll see after this year if more money for materials is the answer. And with that, I was glad chronic absenteeism is down, because we really had a problem after COVID. It was just crazy, the absenteeism we had. And I think there's been a lot of hard work district-wide and school-wide, and I'm so glad to see that. So I know we can do good things. When we put our heart and soul into it, we can do good things. And so next, let's tackle science like we did chronic absenteeism and see if we can't do a good thing there. But my last question is, 2 of our schools got rural funding and 2 did not. So my question is, how does that work? Because I don't understand how 2 are rural and 2 are not. And there's extra funding that comes along with rural funding, and it's kind of significant. And when you have autonomy at your own school with that monies, not having that extra money makes a difference in the programs that you're able to offer and the things you're able to offer the students. So I'm just curious, what is it that qualifies or not, doesn't qualify 2 of the 4 schools in the same city for rural or not rural?
I appreciate the question. I don't have that specific in terms of formulas and the multipliers, but I can get that information immediately to you.
Yeah, because it was pretty significant. Do you know how much extra they get in funding when it's rural?
Not off the top of my head. I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, it's hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
So, and that's teacher salaries, and that's programs, and that's materials. And so I'm just wondering if our scores are going down, things are going down, if we couldn't benefit from all of our schools being considered rural and provided that funding. Just love to have some answers.
Oh, absolutely.
there. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report, especially on the good news with the children in sports and music and arts. I mean, for such a small town, those are big numbers, and I appreciate that. Having looked at this report, obviously the elephant in the room are the African-American children, Latino children, and Native Americans are all down. I've said in, I guess, the last 2 years in these meetings in the council from the other side, and I noticed those numbers were down, and they're still down. I did speak with some teachers, and they explained to me that it could be from COVID, so I should look at the 2017 to 2021 numbers, and then I really couldn't judge it until 2025 to 2027. So following along the lines of the other councilwomen, what is being done, you know, we always have that saying, leave no child behind, and if the children that are ahead are not doing well, these kids are probably doing even worse. So maybe if you could find out what they're doing, whether it's after-school programs or reading programs, something to get these children up to snuff. We know COVID was horrible, but I'm afraid a lot of kids are still left behind, and especially in these groups. I also wanted to know how much parental participation. I don't even know, do we have a PTA? I don't have children, I just have a grandchild who's 3, so, but maybe getting the parents more involved, even in the, what was that, where they were not attending school. The absentees were still about the same from 2 years ago. So I know the numbers are lower here in Boulder City, because I'm only looking at Boulder City, and that may have something to do with the percentages. So maybe if the report could kind of reflect what they're doing with these 3 groups of children, you know, so they're not left behind, because that's really important for all of us. Also, you talked about a shortening in test. You're talking about like tests across the board for reading, writing, arithmetic, when you say shortening of tests?
That's our state test. So our Smarter Balanced assessment that our students take in the spring, which will be coming up here after spring break. That assessment has changed in our elementaries, where the number of questions have decreased.
Is that a good thing?
Yes.
I mean, if they're not excelling and they're getting less tests, that means they're being pushed ahead without that knowledge, because the test shows how much knowledge you have. And if they're shortening the test, I just couldn't get my head wrapped around the numbers and shortening of tests, and if that's a good balance. So I don't know who I need to talk to, or, you know, if these numbers have a purpose, or where they are, they don't look as bad as they look. That could be the case, I don't know, but they look pretty bad to me, and I don't see these groups of kids going to college. Not that college is all end all. There's all kinds of trades and, you know, sports and different things, ways they could go, but I want them to have every chance that every other student has. So I'd like to know a little bit more about the shortening of tests. And my last question is, you may know, you may not know, early childhood education. Do you have any reports on that at all, or is that even something that you report on?
That's not a part of this particular report, but I can provide you, if you have a specific question or concern, I can provide you with specific information on that.
Okay, I just want to know where that's at. I know it was passed by legislation. Just wanted to know how, where, when do we hear more about the early childhood education?
I can provide that information to you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I would like to address, when you talk about the student groups, and again, this assessment was the assessment that was given this time last year. So that's the data from this report. What I do want to share is that our schools are working very diligently with our interim assessments, which is the MAP assessment that I referenced. And we receive that information for each individual student. And our leaders and our teachers at our schools are working very diligently to purposefully plan their lessons, utilizing those Tier 1 materials that are grade level and address the standards that are assessed on the test, to purposefully plan for each individual student. And so we take a look at the classroom of students that we have, of maybe 25 students. We have X amount of students that are achieving at the rate to be proficient, and we have X amount of students that are not, that our teachers are pulling small groups that are providing intervention specifically targeted to what their needs are, and have been doing an excellent job of that this year. and we continue to provide professional learning and support and growth for that. Because as we've seen here, we have a long way to go to best support.
Thank you for bringing that up too, because I think the class sizes are a lot smaller than Southern Nevada or Las Vegas. So I think even with the smaller classes, and these kids are still, their grades are not up to snuff. So just wanted to take a look at that in the whole.
Thank you. I appreciate
you.
that.
Sorry, not that you'd love to hear from me again, but here
No,
it
please.
goes. I have, how many fewer test questions?
I don't have that specific, but I can provide that.
Because I guess I can understand what you're saying. I understand test anxiety. I have one daughter who has test anxiety, ended up on a 504 for it because it was really stressful. But it didn't matter how long the test was. It was just stressful, and she basically tested the same all the time because of that, no matter how long it was. And, and I had one that didn't, and so length didn't matter. But for sure, I think yes, we need to be mindful of test anxiety, but at the same token, don't shortchange the understanding of what we are actually doing here, which is academia, and trying to prepare them for life outside of 12th grade once they leave. And I do want to say, I loved your comment about taking time out to specifically work with them. It's been a long time, and you'll know that now when I say we used to have proficiency exams. Mm-hmm. And my one daughter who had test anxiety could not pass science, and they brought her in and worked with her in small groups. And that was pretty life-changing for her. I mean, she got to graduate, which was fantastic, right? She got to be proficient in that because someone took the time to do the smaller groups. And so those could be solutions too.
Thank you.
So I think what you've heard is some questions, some legitimate questions, so I would invite you back and bring those answers that you talked about.
I would love to be back. Thank you.
And so pick a time, and if you can do that, that would be great to have all of us so we can talk together and learn together.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. We were skipping over, we've heard the report, and we'll follow that up. And we will now move to item number 6, which is Councilwoman Booth's suggestion for the agenda. Go ahead.
Mayor,
Councilwoman.
with your permission, may I bring Attorney Barr up to help me?
If you
explain?
could give us the gist of it all
Okay.
first, that would be
It's to
helpful.
amend Title 11 of the Boulder City Code to authorize the city to enter into agreements of development of land pursuant to NRS 278-0201. Basically, it would allow us, as I understand it, to negotiate with the city council with the developer.
And you would like the attorney to come forward? And,
I would like the attorney to come forward and explain it better than I do.
okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jeff Barr. I'm an attorney and former city attorney, and I currently represent clients in front of august boards like your own. I will say that I just for transparency's sake, I'm not disinterested in this. I have a client who may benefit from this change in the ordinance. I know that I've been working with Ms. Walker. She's been giving, from what I understand, great advice, and I just want to talk about what a development agreement is, why it's necessary, why it's a flexible and useful tool for the city to add to its arsenal when dealing with a developer. So, development agreement is just a legally binding contract. It's between a property owner and a governmental entity. In very broad strokes, developers gain certainty about applicable regulations and requirements throughout the project's life cycle, while government entities can secure public benefits and infrastructure improvements beyond what might be required through standard regulations. Now, the example that I'd like to give you is I've negotiated and enforced dozens of development agreements in my time as city attorney. One of the things that the municipality I worked for did was, in this negotiation with the developer, was we asked for the developer to pay for a fire engine. Nothing in the development code, nothing in Nevada law, through the standard development code, allows a city to ask to pay for a fire engine. I want to stress that the city council is ultimately responsible for negotiating these agreements. They typically direct staff to do that. And development agreements are not foreign to the Boulder City, to Title 11. But they're for very specific uses in Title 11 currently. So what we're asking for is a general enabling ordinance to allow for general development agreements. Let me talk about the three things that I've seen in Title 11 that are currently existing. Number one, a special recreation zone, things like golf courses or maybe an aquatic center or something like that. Number two, senior housing. Number three, an R&D, a research and development zone. Outside of those three specific cases, there is no general development agreement ordinance on the books. Nevada law allows the city council to enter into these agreements, and all we're asking is for the city council to direct staff to draft a general development agreement ordinance. Not asking for specific development agreement tonight, not asking for any specific development concessions, or I'm not negotiating a development agreement today. All I'm asking is that the city council consider passing a general development agreement ordinance. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions? Go ahead.
We have a growth ordinance here, and I'm sure you're aware of that. So no developer can take more than 30 allotments in any given time. So I'm just wondering how we're going to get a fire truck out of someone who really is going to come in and get 30 lots. I'm looking at what would we get, be able really to negotiate. I mean, I understand if you're Henderson and you take out your entire golf course and you put in an entire new community, you could probably negotiate some really remarkable things in there. So my question just is, with as small as we really are talking with what we do in our community, how is this beneficial for us?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the beauty of the development agreement is that both sides can give and get things that they may not be able to get. So while it may not be an entire fire truck, it may not be an aquatic center, it may not be an entire golf course, it may be a contribution to an aquatic center, or it may be a monetary contribution to an electrical upgrade somewhere that's not particular to that specific parcel. It's incredibly flexible in that it's limited really just by imagination and the city's needs. So while yes, you can go very large, you can also go very, very discreet and very small. That's the flexibility that's baked into the ordinance. Now, it's interesting you bring up the growth ordinance. And I'll defer to Ms. Walker. She's very, very capable, very professional, very competent counsel. As I read Nevada law and the growth ordinance, I don't think that is something that can be circumscribed by a development agreement. I think that is, I take that back. It's in theory, it's possible, but at the end of the day, the development agreement comes before the city council. And if that's not one of the city council's priorities, again, that's the beauty of the development agreement. The city council, it's like I like to say it's like baking a cake. It never looks like a cake when you start out, right? You put a little bit of this in, you put a little bit of that in. Each side puts in its wants and its desires, and at the end of the day, we present that to the city council. If the city council says no, we can't live with that, then it doesn't get baked into the cake. To sort of put a point on your question, Councilwoman, at the end of the day, it's maybe it's not a golf course, maybe it's a trail, maybe it's other open space, maybe it's again the limits of this are pretty broad in terms of what cities can do.
You said it possibly could circumvent. You probably wish you hadn't.
No,
But
no, I
can you
want
be
to.
specific? Because that to me is a little unhinging, maybe, possibly?
So at the end of the day, you have for example, you have development standard ordinances. Let's take something a little less controversial. You have design standard ordinances, okay? A development agreement can waive those or can modify that because it's an ordinance of its own. But if the council doesn't desire to waive that in a development agreement, then it doesn't get waived. So in theory, we could. That's how flexible it is. In theory, we could. In practice, would that occur? In practice, would that occur? Probably not. But let me give you an example of something that, for example, that wouldn't be covered by a development agreement. The sale of property, the sale of city property, has to go to the voters, right? That's not development per se. I don't think that Nevada law covers something like that. So there are outer limits to this, but the inner limits are really up to you to decide what you want, what's a benefit to the city, and what's a benefit to the developer. Can we exchange, can we horse trade benefits here? So there may be, for example, as I say, monetary contributions is a big one, because that's not something that the city council can easily exact from a developer, because they're constrained by the development code. Building infrastructure is another way. Building sewer pipes are not the non-glamorous part of development, right? Adding trails, contributing to trails, or adding parkland, that sort of thing. That may not be specific to that particular development, but maybe for an area that's underserved in the city, which, again, under the standard development process is not something that you can exact from a developer developing a particular parcel. So yes, in theory, I want to be very honest. Could this city council get around the growth ordinance? Yes, in theory. Perhaps you don't want to. Perhaps the city council decided as a council that is that is off the table, and that's what we discussed in negotiations. What's on the table, what's off the table.
Go
So-
ahead. Are you done?
Are you
Oh,
done?
I am. Go ahead.
So this is not my wheelhouse. What are we lacking
It's a great
that
question.
we need to have a general development ordinance?
Yeah, so right now, as I read the code, there are only 3 times when a developer can enter into a development agreement. That's with a special recreation zone, that's with senior housing, that's with research and development. I've got a client, my client, doesn't fit into any of those categories. But what it does do is it allows the city to enter into a general development agreement for anything else potentially that could be out there, for all kinds of property development that may or may not fit into these 3 categories.
Okay, so we're not lacking anything. This is a hypothetical if somebody came and they want to do something.
Correct. And right now, I'm not asking for a specific development agreement. I'm not asking for specific terms. All we are asking the council to do is to direct staff to draft an ordinance that enables the city to enter into these types of development agreements.
I don't see the purpose. Maybe I'm missing something, but I just don't see the purpose of it until I have something I can put my hand around and say, oh, we need this, so staff, could you?
Sure. So right now, there's no ordinance on the books that allows the staff to negotiate a development agreement for, say, an owner of 30 parcels. And if the owner wanted to negotiate a development agreement, he or she couldn't. There's no mechanism under Boulder City law.
I'll go ahead and defer to Councilwoman Jorgensen.
Ms. Walker, is there the ability, when we enter into, like, say we just did Toll Brothers, right? I'm just asking because I don't know how this works. So say we entered into an agreement with them, it wasn't a development agreement, but we sold land. Could we, in our contract or in something that we entered into with them, state if they were willing to give us a fire truck?
Yes, so for city-owned land, which a lot of our land is, the majority of the vacant parcels are, that is something the city could negotiate because it's our land. So and to sell it, we can say this is the purchase price. We'd also would like you to do these improvements. For example, while Toll Brothers is not a full development agreement, we did ask them to do the stormwater improvements, which they're doing for the city. So things like that we can ask for city-owned land. Now, for a private parcel, we don't have that standing because we don't own the land.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
So maybe this gets to the crux of the matter here, which is for city-owned land, as Ms. Walker, and I echo exactly, I mean, she's spot on. For city-owned land, you can require a developer to do whatever you want the developer to do. For private land, the current development code circumscribes, and Nevada law and the pesky U.S. Constitution circumscribes the exact things that the city council can ask from a developer.
Question.
And those are the three things?
There are only three, as I read the code, there are only three places where a developer may enter into a development agreement with the city. I'm asking the city to create a general ordinance to allow negotiations for such an agreement. May or may not pass, it's, again, always up to the city council.
I think at this point, it's probably wise that we look at pages 160 and 161 and 162 and 163, that this was not done by city staff, correct?
Correct. City staff did not draft this draft ordinance in the packet.
So we are not looking at this as what the city has done, but you are presenting an opportunity, I'll call it, that the city could do if it wanted to direct staff to do something, not necessarily word for word, but something that is along the same lines of a development.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, so with regard to the draft ordinance that's in your backup, Ms. Walker and I had spoken probably about a month and a half ago now. She's been great. She asked me to prepare that for a separate process that we decided, that my client decided not to go down. So it's just a sample. It's not the ordinance. Today, you're going to direct, I hope, that you will direct staff to prepare a general ordinance. But otherwise, no. This was not drafted by any city staff. It was not reviewed by the city attorney for this purpose. It's not on the agenda tonight. All that the ask is tonight is to direct staff to look at drafting an ordinance and bring it back before you.
Mayor, if I may just add additional context to that, our code has a process where a property owner can request a text amendment to our code, and then that's presented to planning and then council. So when Mr. Barr reached out, I said that's a process that you could follow and apply for this text amendment. And again, like he said, they ultimately chose not to go that route. But I just wanted to add that additional context that it's a process within our code that any property owner can request a text amendment.
And so that tract, whatever it is, we can do whatever the city feels like they need to do and still get something done.
Yeah, the city council has is also able to initiate a text amendment. And so that's what this is today, is if city council wants to direct staff to draft enabling language for a general development agreement, then you can provide that direction to city staff and we can draft it.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the development agreement that Mr. Barr is talking about would basically facilitate doing something sooner in that it wouldn't necessarily have to go through all the steps that we normally would have to go through in order to get something done with the usual thing that we have in Title 11.
Well, if council directs us to draft this ordinance, essentially, we would draft it, bring it back, and if council passes it, it would then enable the city to enter into a development agreement in the future with anyone. And if there's an individual who's interested in a development agreement, they could then approach council, negotiate those terms, and approve that. But that does not negate the need for the developer to go through the entitlement process. They still have to follow the entitlement process. But the key terms would be agreed to in the agreement, like things like density, road width, development standards, all of those things would be set forth in the agreement ahead of time.
So as I look at it, and I think all of us are kind of curious, but as I look at it, I look at Track 350, for instance. So we had an opportunity where we opened it up and people came and gave spirited discussion, strong feelings, and the public was involved day one. And everybody was there, everybody had a say, and everybody said what they wanted to say. And as I understand it, the development agreement would perhaps short-circuit that in some way, make it a little easier for the person who's suggesting something to have it happen before the public notice happened and before the public got involved.
Yes, typically the notice requirements for development agreements are less stringent than for, say, a zoning change. So the property owners wouldn't necessarily get that notice before the agreement's approved, unless, of course, council directs the ordinance to read otherwise. We could always require more notice for a development agreement before it's brought forward too. That's what we could set forth in our statutes. But generally, yes, the notice is not as stringent as it is for, say, a zoning change where you have to notify all the property owners within, I think it's 1,500 feet for zoning.
It depends on, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at the success, I'll call it the success of Track 350, was by and large where everyone had a say and everyone came and said their say, and then the project morphed into something that pretty soon pretty much everybody said, oh, now that they've listened to us, it makes sense of what we can do. And so you see, to go back to the example, Toll Brothers said, okay, we're going to do everything that we did in the open. Everybody knows what we're going to do. And we saw the plans, and when I say we, I mean the greater we of the city. And with the development agreement, I think you are going to do the same kind of thing, except not as much in the light of day initially, I'll call it. Is that somewhat accurate?
Depending on how the ordinance is drafted, but absolutely, it can be. It can be less notice in the beginning than the traditional entitlement process would require.
So in your words, if the city made an ordinance, we could make it the ordinance of doing exactly what we're doing now, which brings me to the question, why do we need an ordinance change? Question mark.
That's really for council to answer.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
may I? The reason that I wanted to bring this forward is because it gives us the opportunity to talk to the developer and ask for the give. And that give might be running utilities to where we want to build a fire station, which is a little bit different because this is private property, and so they don't have to give anything. But with this, we can say, we'll give a little for this, for a little for that, if you help us do something that the city needs and hasn't been able to do. So maybe putting all the infrastructure in for the firehouse would benefit the city. So that's why I brought it forward, is for the benefits that it can help the city with.
If I may, Mayor,
I'm gonna,
Nope.
no.
I've got more to ask
So,
when the
okay,
opportunity
so-
presents
Yeah,
itself. Thank you.
Is there a law that prevents the city from saying that we have a piece of property, a private piece of property, and in order for us to have a development in Boulder City, which is very particular about its developments, that prevents us from saying, if we allow this development to happen, then these are the requirements that we will require of the developer before we approve the development?
We can't, the developer has to go through the process. So if they, so under the current code, the way it's written, if they wanted higher density and, variances from our standards, they'd have to go to planning and have to go through that process. We wouldn't have really an opportunity to ask for extra things in that process. We couldn't say, well, we'll give you your variance if you give the city this much money. We could not do that without a development agreement and authority in place. That would really call for a development agreement. Now, developers do have to do a lot of improvements under our code in order to develop a property. I mean, there's off-site improvements. If there's not utilities, if there's not access, they have to build that at their cost. So that's not something extra we would be asking for. Off-site improvements are required. So any off-site improvements necessary to serve the development, those are already required and wouldn't need a development agreement for.
I'm asking a specific question now. Is there a law that requires or doesn't allow the city to say, without a development agreement, that allows the city to say, if you develop this piece of private property, we will require you to also build a fire station?
It's not that there's a law that says we can't do that. It's that there's a law that says there's not a law that says we can without a development agreement. The development agreement is that law that allows us to ask for those things. Otherwise, we don't have a law, because under Dylan's role, we only have the powers given to us by the state, and we're government. We have to treat everybody equally. So we can't say to an individual,
The short answer is yes, there's a law, we can't do it.
yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
Councilman Walton.
Thank you, Mayor. So in the bullet points under the overview, citing NRS, it indicates that these development agreements are flexible tools authorized by Nevada law for development of large or problem parcels. And since you have already said for city-owned land and development, we have the latitude to essentially do what a development agreement would allow for private land, right?
Correct.
So we're talking just private land. Are there any privately owned parcels that we would, per, I'm guessing NRS outlines this, that are considered large or problem?
Well, that language came from that language came from Councilwoman Booth on that staff report.
Okay. Where does that come from? Where did that originate? Do we, why, how is this included in?
I mean, typically, in talking with the other cities, these are typically used in really large developments. The lowest, from the attorneys that I talked to in the other cities, they've seen them used for is 2,400 homes. And the reason being is when you have such large parcels, the developer can come to the table and say, we can build a better development and build more amenities for these residences with these differences in the development standards. If we have these higher densities, if we have these variances from your development standards, we can really build something better that both gives the public a benefit and the developer a benefit. But they're typically for really large parcels in the other jurisdictions, from my understanding, in conversations with their council.
Thank you. And so are any of our privately owned parcels of that magnitude under the, and I'm guessing, and I'll make this question/statement, those privately owned parcels are currently zoned, right? With a zoning statement, whether it's R115, 110, 17.
Yes.
So they're zoned, right? The currently privately owned parcels are zoned. And based on that zoning, do any qualify for what our city attorney said other entities would classify as large, 2,400 parcels or more?
Nothing of that size.
Even close?
No.
Not even close. Okay. So how many privately owned parcels are there that are zoned in the community that would suit a development? And I don't mean just a 1 acre up off of a foothill or industrial. I mean, that could be residential development.
I don't have the specifics on that, but I would just reiterate what our city attorney mentioned, is that a vast majority of the vacant land in Boulder City is owned by the city. So there's very few privately owned vacant parcels in the community.
Fair enough, thank you. And I've got a few more, Mr. Mayor, so your forbearance is appreciated. We've talked a lot about the idea of a give and a get. What is the typical, and I'll address this to our city attorney, what's the typical give that a city relents when they enter into an agreement, right? There's this potential give. What are we giving up?
Yeah, you are specifying the permitted uses, so you may be changing the permitted use, the giving a higher density, possibly adjusting maximum height and size. And so that's the give, it's a private zoning code for that parcel, is you are kind of customizing the zoning for that particular parcel ahead of time. And so while they still have to go through the entitlement process, those provisions are already agreed to.
And so the notification requirements are less stringent. Those negotiations occur on the side, and only the completed development agreement is presented to council, and that's when the public would see it. Is that right?
Typically, they're negotiated ahead of time and then presented to council, and that is the time the public would see it. The way the ordinance is drafted, though, is up to council, so if more public involvement was wanted in the earlier stages, that is something we could do.
Okay, thank you. That's enough. I mean, I don't mean that to be dismissive. I mean, I got your answer. Thank you. Because I'm just trying to frame, like, why, right? And I appreciate the mayor's question earlier about Track 350. We had the opportunity to do all of the things that we're talking about now because it was city-owned land. And then, we talk about the allotment process. I appreciate that question that was brought up, how that would go. Rezoning requests or density, which kind of goes hand in hand with that, is not done as part of the typical process that our Boulder City community is very accustomed to, and I would say very, very connected with. And then I wonder, and I'm going to just wonder this out loud, because if we say this and we have some honorable intention, but we change the code, what happens in 5 years or in 10 years? And what happens with another developer or another council that is an unintended consequence that we never would have imagined would occur? Because today we thought, well, maybe it's a good idea. And so I'm really questioning the wisdom in it, and including the value in it, in what we might give up. I can't imagine what we would give in order to give up the potential package that Boulder City, I think residents are just flat going to demand, and I think they should. And I think as a council, we have kind of committed to that over the years of service. So anyway, that's the end of my questions and statements.
Okay.
Just to reiterate a little bit of what you said too, with that concern, I think part of my concern is when you said there is the possibility to circumvent in a way. And I don't believe any of us up here would circumvent, but I don't know, just like you said, 5 years from now, what could happen. And I think there's a reason that our community has developed the way that it has. And there's a reason we are who we are, and a lot of that has to do with our growth ordinance, and a lot of that has to do with the choices of how we choose to add to our community. And so the thought that anybody, any 5 people up here could circumvent that at any given time makes me a little bit nervous too.
I was going to say the same thing. I wrote down circumvention, and also, Boulder City is built on transparency. That's why we do what we do on TV for, our community. And so anytime the community is not notified in the time that's allotted to them to notify, I think that would be wrong. And how much of property do we have that we would need to do that? I could see, like someone said, a big development where you're developing maybe a community and you need more stores or more fire departments, or where's that at here? So I go back to my original question, what are we lacking and what is the purpose? For me personally, I can't see asking the staff to do something. If I'm going to ask the staff to do anything, it'd be explain why. And I think that's a general consensus up here, but, and for me personally, I just can't get my head wrapped around a change that's not needed at this time.
Can I ask our community development / acting city manager a clarifying question? Again, if a developer has a desire to change the density, the zoning, the conditions, there's an avenue for them to come to the city and proceed and make those requests, right?
That is correct.
So we're not standing in the way of development, standing in the way of adjusting requests for developers, or having them be heard at the planning commission or in open meetings and request currently, right? So everything that could be done essentially, other than the city saying, hey, but we're going to ask for this, which we don't have the right to do, right? A developer can do everything they or might be able to request in a development agreement. That's the end of the question.
Okay. Certainly with the zoning, they have the right to submit an application and go through the due diligence process to rezone, request for additional density, but that would require review by staff, that would require review by the Planning Commission, and ultimately the City Council to decide.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I just feel Boulder City doesn't have vast amounts of land here, and we're not going to have vast development. I think within this, you could actually say, put in what your concerns were. But again, I just feel it allows us to ask something of the developer that we might need as a city and that we haven't been able to afford as a city. That's where I think the importance of this is. So that's all that I have to say. I can't say any more, I don't think.
Any other comments?
I'll just say I appreciate that, right? We always want to weigh everything in the balance. And the conversation is productive and valued. And it's, I don't think, no matter how this discussion turns out, that there wasn't value in having the consideration and weighing the pros and the cons on the balance. So thank you for bringing it up, and we had a great, I think, a productive conversation.
Other comments? So we have the item for possible action. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to move forward.
Can you
Want me to say amending Title IX? Oh, and direct staff to.
I think the language per the resolution would
It's
be.
down here. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you did that for me. I'm so sorry. Can I read yours? This is the motion that I'd like to make, that the city council discuss and possibly direct staff to prepare an ordinance of the city of Boulder City, Nevada, amending Title 11 of Boulder City Code of Authorization, authorize the city to enter into an agreement for development of land pursuant to NRS 278.0201. Thank you, Dr. Hardy.
Thank you.
And thank you, staff, for doing that too.
Now, Robert's Rules of Orders requires a second if one wants to give a second. Is there a second? Seeing no second, the motion dies.
I thank the city council. Thank you, Mayor, for your
Thank you.
generosity and time. Thank you.
Brings us to item 7.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Item 7 is an amendment to the employment agreement for Mr. Ned Thomas. As you know, the City Council approved Mr. Thomas's contract in January of this year to have a start date of March 15th. Mr. Thomas, after the contract was entered into, discovered he needed additional time before he could begin his tenure, and so this amendment would extend the start date of employment to on or around April 15th.
Is there a discussion? I will accept a motion.
Move to approve Resolution 7945.
Is there a second?
Second.
And any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. It's unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to the possible action city council appointment to the allotment committee. And the allotment committee is chosen by drawing a lot. And the lot could be appropriately at this time of the year be designated in a little glass jar that has Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Mayor, could you explain the background?
I was waiting for you to do that.
My first.
So you mean the allotment process?
Yes, sir.
That is our city clerk's job.
I'll review what's in the staff report. First of all, per City Code Title III, a board member must be a resident of the city of Boulder City, and permanent board members are only eligible for one service on one permanent board at any given time. The allotment committee is comprised of 7 at-large members serving 2-year terms. The allotment committee rates and reviews applications for allotments and presents its recommendations to the Planning Commission. Allotment committee members are drawn by lot.
That wasn't my question. How did we get to this lot? Where did that history come from that we have to draw? We don't draw for any other commission. I think there's a backstory.
There is, it was an initiative of, it went along with the growth control, the slow growth ordinance, and it was an initiative, and that was included in the initiative that the applications be drawn by lot rather than appointed by the city council.
Very unique.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. I just
You're
wanted
welcome.
the background.
So there are people who have checked the box of what they wanted to serve on, and those people's names go into our little glass bowl, and then we draw the lot. We being me, and I have an assistant who's willing to hold the glass bowl so I can't see it, and then I will reach deep into the glass bowl, and she can mix it up as much as she wants, and then I will draw out of the glass bowl who that is. And that will be one of the people whose names are on our list of people who have put on their name forward to be drawn. And I guess one of the rationales for the whole thing was this is apolitical. It's not, my favorite person. We're not voting for my favorite person. We're voting for someone who wanted to serve. And so they put their name forward, and then we take it out, and there's no gimme or gizmos that decides it. And people who prepared the little pieces of whatever it is, they don't tell me anything other than what you see their name could be.
All righty.
So, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll close my eyes. Okay. And I think I'm only supposed to take one.
That's one.
That's one.
That's one.
And then I'm going to give it to the Mayor Pro Tem to read
Oh, okay. Gary
out loud.
Dahlia? Oh, sorry. Gary Dahlia.
All right. So Gary Dahlia has been appointed to the Allotment Committee. We did it. Okay. Phew. And then that brings us to public comment, our second public comment. Anyone who would like to testify in public comment, take up to 3 minutes and come forward. And if you're on the line, you'll call 702-589-9629. And if you want to all come forward all at once, that'd be okay, but
All right. Hi, my name's Bryn Delormier, and I just wanted to speak on a couple items regarding the animal shelter and animal control. First, I'd like to thank them for this morning and over the past few weeks. We've been trying to trap a feral cat that's been injured and is been hanging out around our neighborhood for at least as long as I've lived here. And we got him this morning, so I don't know if you all can see this. Let's see. Here's a picture of him. He's a little orange kitty. So he's up at the animal control shelter as of first thing this morning. He's on a 5-day hold, and they'll take him to the vet. They'll decide if they'll give him a checkup. They'll fix him and decide if he's able to be socialized enough to be adopted. And if not, he'll be released back into our neighborhood as one of our many ferals that we already care for. So thank you all for your support of the Boulder City Animal Shelter. They do a fantastic job there. So yeah, thank you all for your support of them. We all appreciate them here. And thank you all for hearing us out at the last few months worth of city council meetings regarding the leash law. And thank you all who have reached out to me after, I think it was the last city council meeting, regarding possible steps we weren't sure if it was going to be on this agenda or the next, or who knows when it'll come back. But I just wanted to reiterate my own opinions for that, and a couple people that I've talked to, my neighbors and so forth, and maybe some of them have written to you. So I've talked to a couple of you all, and I think I've stated my position pretty clearly, but just for the record. As a reminder, most of the city council wasn't up here when it was last discussed by the last city council in February of 2022, before we had the dog park in Veterans Memorial. And it was voted down then because people said they didn't have a grassy space to run their dogs. A survey was issued to all the residents, and that was what they chose. They were given that as one option. They were given parks all around the city as another option, which I would have personally preferred. But that's what they went for. And they said the leash law would be revisited upon the time that opened, which was August 15th, 2023. So I'm glad we're revisiting it now, better than never. So I do support the leash law as it was written and introduced at the last city council meeting, but realizing that a lot of people weren't happy with the Veterans Memorial Park dog park solution, given that it's on a hill, a lot of the grass dies there, and that people want a walkable dog park, which I can understand. Sorry, I'll be quick. I wanted to just state that for the record, I feel like it's a compromise to allow dogs to roam in the desert as one of the options was proposed. I think that's a compromise if they want to take on that responsibility for themselves. I do not agree with the parks in this area, in the downtown area, being used at certain hours for off-leash, being that all residents walk through them at all hours of the day. I do agree with one member's suggestion of maybe creating other walkable dog parks in within the city. I live close to here, a block and a half from here. The north end of Broadbent Park was one that I had suggested, so I hope that's considered. It's not used for much else from what I've seen, so I'll leave it at that. And thank you all for spending so much time on this issue. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone on the phone line? 702-589-9629. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Pam Triolo, and I'm speaking on the dog park, hoping that it's going to be coming up pretty soon. At the last meeting, they talked about our uniqueness is part of the reason we may not have a leash law. And I totally agree, we are an extremely unique town. We've got slow growth, we're a small town. I think we're an awesome town. I live on the Hemingway Valley. The sheep come all over the place. It luckily doesn't like my yard. My next door neighbors gets them quite often. And we can't have a dog park over there just because of the sheep. They roam the whole thing. But I think it's a good idea to put more dog parks around town. But I hope you approve the leash law before the dog parks are put in, because we know how the time that could take to get them in. I did think about one thing. If I'm walking along and some strange person comes and knocks me down, that's assault. If some strange person comes and bites me, that's really assault. But it's okay if a dog does it, and that's not right. And we have to kind of think about that. And my way of thinking, if one person gets knocked down or one person gets bit, that's one person too many. And people have come up with stats. Well, it was only 7 people last year that got bit. Well, that's 7 people too many. So I hope you consider this when you hopefully bring it up in the next few weeks, and that we do get a leash law passed. So thank you.
Thank you. No one on the phone line? 702-589-9629. No one else here in chambers. We will close public comment and go to City Council report. Councilman Walton, we'll start with you if you want.
Thank you, Mayor. Had the opportunity to attend the Convention and Visitors Authority board meeting today, and some great topics were brought up. The Oakland A's were here playing the Arizona Diamondbacks for Big League weekend at the baseball facility in Summerlin, and hopefully, that's a forecast of things to come. We know that the A's stadium will begin to excavate within the next couple of months, with an official groundbreaking expected to be in June of this year. So that's very exciting, and the design is what experts would call iconic, and will be a great place for baseball to be played. And they were expecting the Oakland A's to be here for the 2028 baseball season, so that's exciting for us. We talked a lot about the visitor profile for people to Las Vegas, how it's changed over the 50 years they've been keeping track, and as well as the pandemic abnormalities. And I'll just summarize it by saying the visitors, as far as number of people per room and the number of people traveling with somebody under 21 years of age, and the people who mix work and pleasure are returning to pre-pandemic statistics. And so that actually shows a good sign for the visitation for the destination. The average age, a fun fact, did you know the average age of the visitors to the Las Vegas area down to the center of the downtown and strip area is 43.6 years of age. So a little younger than the average age of our citizens here in Boulder City. Yeah. And, that'll be the conclusion of that. And no new news from the Water Authority. We're still working with them on the feasibility study to determine how we want to proceed as a council. When that comes out, that'll be released to the public. I do want to say I'm really grateful for the opportunity to participate in Nevada Reading Week at the elementary school. I was in and I'm just going to shorten it by Mr. Wojo's third grade class. And it was just such a delight. I really enjoyed the opportunity to interact with the third graders and talk to them about the importance of reading, the joy of reading, and read them a book and all the lessons we can learn from that. And so, hooray for Nevada Reading Week. And I'll conclude there. Thank you.
Thank you. I think most of us had an opportunity to go read to those kids. That's a favorite thing of mine since I was a school teacher before. I kind of felt like I was back on home turf, and it was really nice. I got to read to fourth grade, and they let me stay there for a half hour and read and share, and it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. But I also kind of wanted to shout out to our high school, all the things that we heard that were great, and to our junior high and to our elementary schools. We have great kids here who are trying. I love to hear that the girls' basketball state academic award. That really says a lot, especially when we just saw some of the numbers we just saw. So thank you to them. Boys bowling, flag football, Allegiant Stadium. It doesn't get better than that. I'm not sure they'll get in a bigger venue than that. And robotics team, cheerleading, they're building guitars. I mean, they're competing. This is a well-rounded education in our small city, and I am grateful for that, and just grateful for the opportunity to watch our kids grow.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see. So I attended my first Southern Nevada Regional Planning Committee, which was renamed Southern Nevada Council of Government. So I don't know when they're going to meet again, but I was able to do that via Zoom. On March 19th, I just want to let everyone know that Clark County Parks and Rec and Henderson Historical Society will present the 80 years in the past. It'll be a discussion on the significant role that Boulder City and Henderson played during World War II. Also today, I went to my second meeting to the Civilian Military Council Executive Board Committee, and there was some great speakers there, but two I want to highlight is Pathways for Patriots. It's a program that CCS and CCSD has put together for active duty military, veterans, and military family if they have a desire to become teachers. They have a whole program that's laid out. It's fantastic. The other thing they named, and it was a big surprise to me, the Nellis Air Force Base Aviation Nation, the air show has been changed from October to April. That was big because I go to that every year. That's going to be on the 5th and 6th of April, and I asked staff if they could put it in the minutes, so if you have any further information on these programs or events, you could go to the minutes from today and get some further information. Thank you very much.
It never fails in the middle of July, your AC goes out. That's just a given. So Michael Mays has been so gracious. He's worked with the building department, and if your AC goes out, you can have the repairman can come repair it and get the permit the following workday. So if it happens on Friday afternoon, they can fix your AC and then come get the permit on Monday morning. There's also water heater replacements the same way, main breaker replacements, water surface line repairs, service charge same, gas tests, and re-roof sheathing only. In other words, you can't put a whole roof up. on the weekend, but you can go out and repair a roof so that you don't have floods. So I want to thank Mr. Mays for doing that and getting that going so that your AC can be fixed when it's broken. I also want to thank Michael Bangs again and Gary Poindexter. I had a couple residents that had some issues, and they took care of them immediately, calmed them down, and I really appreciate that, and great job to a great staff. I, too, got to go to Mrs. Valencia's class. It's a 4th grade class, and read to them. Had a great time. I was just amazed how bright these kids are. It was just, to me, I had so much fun. I could go do it every day, I think, just about. But one of the things when they were there, they wanted to know, what do I do? Can I get a Chick-fil-A here? Or could I get a Cane's here? I said, no, that with my job, I can't do that, but I can only do city things. So they would like a more challenging skateboard park. That was one of the big things that they came up with, is that skateboard park is not quite challenging enough. And also, I don't know if anybody noticed my beautiful necklace I'm wearing. I have a wonderful friend named Andy Giroux, and he's my best supporter I have, and I want to thank him for this beautiful necklace. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you all. I think one of the things we have a good time with was when we read to the children at the school. I had that opportunity, and I thought I was doing very well. And I videoed my 8-year-old grandson as he was talking in 3rd grade to 3rd graders his own age. And I put that up on the big screen TV. And I thought I had their attention until I saw what the kids were doing when they watched one of their own. I mean, they were just still amazed, and when they see what can be done in their own age group with reading, it was powerful. And so I was so thrilled to be there and watch that happen, and watch the light in their eyes when they said, I could do that too. It was a great experience. I appreciate everyone today being able to interact, and love this council. And if there's no one on the line and no one else has anything to say, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.